$1,300 is a lot of money. Sure, in the grand scheme of things, it isn't a whole lot, but still, if you're dropping dough on a monitor, you're gonna want to make sure it's money well spent. Which is why I, Alex from Rtings.com, am here to deliver a cautionary tale. On paper, the LG 27GR95UM-B, LG's first mini LED gaming monitor, should be fantastic, but in practice, it's anything but. Looks-wise, this is a pretty run-of-the-mill 27-inch 4K screen with an IPS panel. It features the same prong stand you'll find on other UltraGear monitors that allow for a decent range of adjustments, but only vertically. The screen doesn't swivel horizontally, so you'll have to physically move the whole thing if you want to show someone your screen next to you. It does flip into portrait mode though. Where there's the biggest departure from previous UltraGear monitors is the backlighting. LG's incorporated mini LED backlighting into this monitor, complete with 1560 dimming zones. While this should offer up an incredible picture quality, the implementation is bad. For example, enabling the local dimming feature actually makes the picture quality worse. There's quite a bit of black crush, so you lose out on details in dark scenes. Subtitles, or really anything bright, also cause a ton of blooming. In fact, the only thing local dimming improves is the contrast. But when the native contrast bar is on the floor, you're only improving to mediocre at best. Blacks look gray no matter what, so scenes relying on darker atmospheres just don't have that impact. They kinda just look like a blotchy mess. Yes, there are 3 local dimming settings, but alas, none of those settings improve the performance. Faster offers the brightest image, but it also causes the most black crush. Those picture quality issues are impactful to say the least. But like we said, on paper, this monitor has a lot going for it. Thanks to the mini LED backlighting, you end up with a much brighter image overall, which is great if you're planning to use this monitor in a bright environment. In SDR, it peaks at 806 nits in a 10% window, helping to mitigate glare falling on the screen. In HDR, it can get as bright as 1408 nits. While you'd expect that this high peak brightness would allow for an incredible HDR experience, there's 2 things to consider. One, of course, being the local dimming issue we just mentioned. Those bright highlights aren't going to look good if the black levels around them are raised and blotchy. The second is its slow PQ EOTF roll-off as the highlights approach peak brightness. This means the highlights don't get as bright as they could. When it comes to the gaming meat of the monitor, it's at least a little bit more promising. While there's some motion blur at 60 Hz and noticeable inverse ghosting if you set the overdrive setting to faster, there's less blur at higher refresh rates, even when you overclock to 160 Hz. Its refresh rate compliance is generally good, but its response times aren't fast enough at high refresh rates for the monitor to make a full color transition before drawing the next frame. This monitor supports all major VRR technologies and offers good motion handling across its VRR range. We found that the fast overdrive setting offered the best performance, though there was more inverse ghosting when the refresh rate drops. Thankfully, those refresh rate drops don't cause VRR flicker. This monitor actually just doesn't have any flickering issues at all, which is great if you're sensitive to it. It also doesn't have a backlight strobing feature, but the blur isn't too bad despite that. Another piece of the gaming puzzle is input lag, which is very low on this monitor as well. Speaking of inputs, this monitor boasts 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.4 port, and 2 USB 3.2 ports. There is also a 3.5mm audio jack on the bottom of the monitor that supports DTS Headphone X to simulate surround sound audio. Thanks to the HDMI 2.1 bandwidth and 4K resolution, this monitor is fully compatible with both the PS5 and Xbox Series X or S for console gaming, if that's your style. That said, just keep in mind that the Xbox doesn't support HDR gaming with 1080p or 1440p signals. For just general browsing, its text clarity is actually fantastic. Text looks sharp, clear, and easy to read. Its viewing angle isn't anything to rave about though. The image gets darker the further off center you move, but it's good enough if someone needs to peep at your screen from the side. Though it gets bright enough to stave off glare, it doesn't handle direct reflections very well. It has a matte finish that diffuses light, but does so across the entire screen, so reflections are pretty distracting. Finally, colors. This monitor has decent accuracy before calibration. The sRGB mode locks colors fairly well, but doesn't resolve the issues with white balance, gamma tracking, and a too warm color temperature. This mode also locks you out of a variety of settings. Switching to other modes doesn't really do you any favors since they're even less accurate with more oversaturated colors. Calibration, then, is actually a pretty good thing for this monitor. It fixes those issues and also gives you access to those locked out settings since you don't have to stay locked into the sRGB mode. Regardless of if you're in HDR or SDR, the monitor has a wide color gamut, though it's more likely to oversaturate colors in the Adobe RGB color space, which is worth noting if you also create a little content here and there. So that brings us to the main question. Should you buy this monitor? No. While LG really swung for the fences with this mini LED monitor, its local dimming implementation has too much of a negative impact on the picture quality for us to confidently recommend it. Sure, the gaming performance is actually pretty good, but it is harder to enjoy the games you're playing if you're having difficulty seeing the darker details. Even though it's generally on an aggressive sale, for its MSRP of $1,299, you're in OLED territory, where you won't have to compromise on picture quality for performance. Choices such as the MSI MPG271QRX, which is actually even cheaper, are available. Though you're trading a 4K resolution for 1440p, you're getting a much higher 360Hz refresh rate. Plus, the QD OLED panel ensures that contrast is perfect. You have no blooming, black crush, or drastically raised blacks to speak of. There are also the near instantaneous response times that OLEDs are known for, meaning you won't have to deal with blur or inverse ghosting. It doesn't get as bright though, and if you are in a bright environment, you'll have to deal with the purple tinted blacks that come with QD OLEDs. But this is a significant upgrade over what the LG has to offer. Of course, it is worth noting that there is a risk of burn-in with any OLED, especially if you're planning on using it for work tasks in addition to gaming, where a lot of static elements will remain on screen. If you're looking for a versatile option that does it all and is still a 27-inch 4K mini LED, there's the Acer Nitro XV275K P3. Coming in at a significantly lower price, the Nitro also offers some great extra features like a KVM switch, a wider range of ergonomic adjustments, and a USB-C in port with 90 watts of power delivery. And that's on top of its better response time, more accurate BQ-EOTF tracking, and significantly better local dimming. Well, that's all for our review of the LG 27GR95UM-B. If you're interested in learning more about this monitor, head on over to our website to read the full written review. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Alex from Rtings.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. Bye! The second is its slow PQ-EOTF roll-off as highlights a preach peak brightness. Oh man, I was going so well.
You were doing really well. But not anymore. No.
Shame. Scrap it.